This is the 2025 Harley-Davidson Street Bob, and this year it's got a bigger engine, various upgrades, and it's gone from being a bull to a beast. What the f***?
Now, Harley-Davidson have done a few upgrades to the Street Bob, which have taken this bike to a whole new level. Namely, the main one is the 117 cubic inch V-twin. This is a monster of an engine. It's got so much torque, and now they've introduced modes to this bike. It's got sport, road and rain. So in sport mode, this thing is a complete and utter animal. There's so much torque at the twist of a throttle that it just takes off like a rocket. It's got unbelievable torque, and even from really low down in the RPM range, 1,500 RPM, it pulls. It really does. So this is an absolute beast of a motorcycle.
Now, if you're wondering the differences between the engines, this originally had a 107 cubic inch engine, and then it went to the 114 and now the 117. Now, the differences I'm going to sort of summarise with some analogies. It's basically like the 107 is a big guy in the gym who looks pretty impressive, but he's natural, okay? The 114 cubic inch engine is an older guy. He's big, he's burly, he's been on steroids for quite a long time, but he's mellowed out, and it's a nice sort of mellow but big muscly guy. The 117 is the guy in the gym who everyone goes, flipping the size of that guy, he's on trend. It's the full deal. This is the full flipping deal. It's a very potent motorcycle, have no doubt about it.
With the introduction of modes for this motorcycle, it gives you the feeling of the various different Harley Milwaukee-Eight engines all in one package. So in sport mode, you get the full potential of this 117 cubic inch. In road mode, it feels more like the 114 did, and in rain mode, it feels like the 107. So this bike can be toned down or toned up depending on where you're riding and what you're doing. So I'd say if you're riding around town, I would put this in rain mode, because it just makes it so much more easy to ride, and it's not wanting to go, oh, come on. So it's better around town in rain mode. And of course, with all that torque, if it is a rainy day, you don't want to unleash all of that torque all in one go. So having it in rain mode is a sensible thing to do. Now, perhaps rain mode could be called wet mode, but I think sport mode doesn't feel right for this bike because it's not a sports bike. So I think a more fitting name for that mode would be beast mode. But you let us know in the comments below what you would name each of the modes. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I used to own a Harley-Davidson Softail Standard, which is essentially the same bike as this really, but with a 107 engine, and that bike produced a lot of torque, 144 newton meters at 3,250 RPM. But this bike doesn't produce that much more torque, but it comes down even lower, or peaks even lower in the RPM range. So you've got 156 newton meters at 2,750 RPM, which is just insane. So all the torque is there from the get-go.
Now, if you're watching from India, you'd see the cows around and think that's completely normal. In this country, it's very abnormal. This is one of very few places where cows are roaming freely, and they've got a sort of a country estate here. But it's not a normal everyday sight here, which is a shame because it's lovely to see that in India. Now, getting back to the bike, well, let's have a sit on it. I'm 6'2". That's angle it so you can see me. It's a lovely riding position. Your hands are nice and high and wide. It feels like it's a wider handlebar than the previous model. I don't know if it is, but it does feel that way. I think the foot position is perfect. I wouldn't want forward controls. You do sit low in the bike, but that's the sort of style of riding, and it does ride nicely. I love this narrow front wheel. It really carves into the corners nicely. It's not a sporty bike, of course, but it does corner nicely and manoeuvres very nicely. And you've got a 30-degree rake and a very long trail, so it's super stable. It's a lovely ride. So if you're thinking of getting one of these, I wouldn't think too long. It's ever so nice. And looking up front, it used to have this little tiny digital display in the handlebar mount. Now it's got a beautiful analog speedometer in the centre, not in the flipping offset, which is where it's supposed to be, right in the dead centre, and it's flipping nice. And you can see it and read it easily. Thank you, Harley-Davidson. You've actually been listening to your customers.
So there's some various other upgrades they've done with the Street Bob this year. One of them is the wheels. Now you've still got spoked wheels, but these are tubeless spoked wheels. So if you get a puncture, you don't need to change an inner tube, just a tyre. So that's good. A lot of people will like that. It doesn't look as classic, but they are very good looking. And they kind of give it more of an aggressive look, if I'm honest, which does go with this motorcycle. The brakes are very good, no problems there. They're not, the best brakes in the world, but they're perfectly good enough. The gearbox, as usual with Harley-Davidsons, it's got a lovely clonk. It really has a lot of feel to the gearbox. They are the most characterful gearboxes in any motorcycle, and I love that about Harleys. It really does enhance the experience. Another thing they've changed is you've got these LED indicators now. There's some various rider enhancements, they call it, which are sort of aids and things, but if you want to look that up, you can look at that on the website. I'm not going to explain that to you because it'll get too boring. Another thing they've changed is the switchgear, and whilst it looks nice and the finish is very nice, if anything, I'd say they've doubled in size compared to the old switchgear on the previous Street Bob and the Softail Standard, which were very nice looking switchgear. So I don't know why the reason for that is, why it's got bigger, but they have, and I think it's probably a little bit too big. But maybe it's to do with the fact that now you've got cruise control with this motorcycle as standard, so you've obviously got the controls for that on the left hand side here. So I suppose if they've had to make that one bigger, it would look weird if the right one was smaller, so they're both the same size to make it symmetrical. Looking front to back, you've got these lovely conventional forks right away up. Beautiful headlamp on this. I love the shape of that. It's really nice, very classic. Good looking engine, good looking exhaust, just the right amount of chrome. It's all blacked out. The seat's comfortable, nice and soft. You've got a pad on there for your friend if you have one, and some pillion pegs. You've got a proper mudguard on the back. Even though it's sort of bobber style, it still has a decent mudguard, not one of those sort of cut things, and if you fall off the back you land on the wheel and destroy your reproductive system. Huge number plate on the back. I won't talk about that horrible thing. The front mudguard is reasonably sized. It could still be longer, and there's no reason why any bike, even a bobber, can't have a proper mudguard now, because the sort of style so ancient that who needs a short mudguard anymore. So if it was a longer, you'd have less cleaning to do when you go out on a mucky day, because obviously the wheel will throw up muck onto the lower part of the engine there. Overall, I think this is a stunning motorcycle. What do you think? But we love it. It's absolutely incredible, and it does turn heads, and as you saw, people walk past and talk to you about it. Now, although your hands are quite high on this, sort of just below shoulder height for me, and the mirrors therefore are high, I could see probably only a quarter of the road in the mirrors, so they could do with being a little higher and a little further out, really, to be honest. Because it's quite handy to see behind you, but then you'll be going so fast on this, it doesn't really matter, because this is a seriously potent motorcycle. So that's just a sort of little niggle. The controls are very positive, a nice brake control. The gear lever is quite high up, so you have to lift your foot off to change down a gear, but that's just a characteristic of the Street Bob. They've always been like that. You can adjust it. Yeah, you can adjust it. But still, I don't think you can get it very low like a normal bike. This isn't a normal bike.
trust me. So if you want one of these, you've got to be the sort of person that wants to stand out from the crowd. You want something different, and you want something flipping cool, because these bikes are seriously cool. And we've got lined up 3 more Harley-Davidsons as well to review. We've got the Breakout 117, same engine, the Lowrider S, and the, what's the other one? Fat Boy. Oh, iconic bikes, the best of the bunch. So we're going to decide, once we've done them all, which one is the best one. But between them all, they're all perfect. They're fantastic motorcycles, so you can't really go wrong with a Harley-Davidson.
So the Street Bob costs £14,995 starting price in the UK. So I think it's a fair amount of bike for the money. And I believe this is the cheapest bike on the Harley-Davidson lineup now. I don't know if they still do the Softail standard. Probably because they gave it a stupid name. It should have been the Street Bob Classic, and then it would have sold like hotcakes. So I did forget a couple of specs, one of which is the power, which is 91 horsepower at 5,020 RPM, but I kind of forgot that on purpose, because Harley-Davidsons are not about power. So you can almost forget the power figures when it comes to these bikes and just think about the torque, because it's got a monstrous amount of torque and it peaks so low down in the RPM range that that's how you want to ride these bikes. You don't want to rev them above 4,000 RPM really. It's ever so nice to just short shift, but the deep grunty noise and all that torque is immense. And it weighs 293 kilograms. So I believe that is actually lighter than my Softail standard was. That was 297 kilograms, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know how they've saved that weight with a bigger engine, but they seem to have done so. So it doesn't feel too heavy, and it does feel like they've balanced the weight very well. So this bike felt easier to push out of the garage than my Softail standard did. So I think this bike would be easier to manoeuvre in the garage and tight spaces. It doesn't really feel as heavy as it is on paper. I would say this is probably the second best handling Harley-Davidson after the Lowrider S. And obviously we need to remind ourselves of how that bike rides this year. But I remember that being an incredible handling bike. You know, it handled as well as a Naked, I said in my video, and that caused loads of comments going, "Oh, you're an idiot." But ride it, seriously, it handles immensely, and it's flipping quick, and it doesn't feel heavy at all. It really hides its weight. So all those stupid comments are from idiots who haven't ridden the bike. So if you go and ride the bike, you'll see what I'm saying. But this bike does handle really, really nicely. So you do feel like you can enjoy yourself on some twisty lanes, perhaps not ones that are too narrow, because this is more of a bike for an open road, but it does handle beautifully. And when you get on this bike, it's the riding position of it just feels so cool, and it makes you want to ride like a hooligan almost. It's not, you know, a crazy sports bike, but it just makes you ride a bit sort of, what's the word? Rugged. Okay, yeah, that's the right word. It makes you feel like that. It's just, there's something about this bike, it gets in your veins.
Now, as we've said many times in the past, they've got the same stand on this bike, and once it's engaged and down, it really is a solid stand. It's brilliant, but they still haven't done what I said 3 years ago, which is to make the foot with a little scoop up, because sometimes when you lean the bike onto a bit of rough ground, the end of it digs in and it won't fully extend as the weight goes onto the stand, and therefore if it doesn't do that you can drop it. So it's the only thing that they really need to change. So maybe they're not listening.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on our upcoming Harley reviews that are coming over the next few weeks and months. But also, if you like modern classics, you like motorcycle lifestyle, and you like seeing motorcycle travel videos in interesting places, seeing interesting people, eating amazing food, etc., then this is the channel to subscribe to, because we're going to be doing a lot more of that this year.
This is the new 2025 Harley-Davidson Street Bob, and this year it's got, fuck it,